Hello lovely people, I'm K3N and welcome to week 20, I think, is it? of our Slowstitch project for 2024. This week I'm going to talk to you a little bit before we start from here. I'm sitting on my little sofa in my studio. I've got Stella with me, but she's slightly down out of shot. Come upstairs so that people can see. There we go. Now you can't see her because she's the same colour as my cardigan. We're colour coordinated. Yes, I've wanted for some time to talk about the overwhelming nature sometimes that we have with what's commonly called the stash, the crafter's stash. Stash is not a word that I like to use very much because for me it has connotations of hoarding, of accumulating things just to have them, and that's absolutely not what I'm about. And I'm not here to say my way is right and anybody else's way is wrong. All I'm here to do is to talk about myself and what I do. That's what I do everywhere all the time. And then it's up to you, my lovely supporters and my lovely community, whether you choose to follow or not. You do you and all that. But I do know that many people have accumulated stuff over time from whatever source. And at one point it becomes so much that it can really bring you down. It can really become a burden on you, not only on your creativity, that's principally what I'm going to talk about, but I mean, emotionally and personally. And I did have it a little bit myself when I was a normal quilter, that I had a lot of stuff that I'd bought years ago. And when I left the UK to come to France, for me that was the time, that was, oh, you're going downstairs. That was the opportunity to de-stash, that word again. So I managed to rehome a lot of the things that I'd acquired, because I was teaching, so I had students, and I passed stuff on to them. And I found a charity locally that made quilts for babies, and they were happy to take some of my fabrics, my new fabrics off my hands and so on. And it wasn't for me about getting rid of stuff because I had too much. It was more about freeing up my creativity, because I felt that when I had so much, the choice was overwhelming. You want to make something, and you often get that thing that's said as well, that you don't use your stash, you go and buy more. That thing as well. So yeah, that whole thing just became too much for me. And some people love it, and that's what they do, and that's I'm not here to judge or say what's right or wrong, but I just know that myself, I found that became overwhelming. And luckily for me, I had that opportunity. That was a sort of a big turning point in my life, to move countries, and you have to think, do I really want to invest money and time in packing that in a box to take that with me, to go and live in a different country, or can I rehome it? And that way I did manage to get rid of a lot of stuff. And the other thing is, it's not only buying the stuff, also, it can be, for me, being offered it, because people know I like to use recycled materials, I like to use old cloth and so on. So people very, very kindly offer you things, don't they, often? And you accept it because you're grateful. And even sometimes, be honest, you look at it and you think, there's no way I'm going to use that, but I don't like to say no, I don't want to hurt their feelings. Or maybe from a more pragmatic point of view, you might think that if I refuse this now, they might not offer me again, and next time it might be something I do want. So, for one reason or another, you end up with all this stuff, and then you're sitting there and you want to go to your happy place to create, and you're sitting there in this room or whatever, surrounded by all this stuff, and you don't know where to go. You can't go left, you can't go right, you can't go straight on, you can't pick up your needle, you don't know where to start. So that, that's a very big nutshell, but that's kind of what I want to address with this week's theme. So I want to do it through telling a story, through having a story in the work that we do, as I always try to do, rather than kind of tackling it head on, which is quite big and scary, and it's not bad to bring up emotions, but we want to do it in a gentle and productive way. So I came up with the idea of sending you all off to a desert island, not all together, that would somewhat defeat the object, alone, each of you. Not literally, unfortunately, or fortunately, that would depend on your point of view. I mean, some people would love to sit alone and be allowed to craft or stitch or whatever, uninterrupted, and some people would find that isolating and awful. We're all different. But just let me put you in the right frame of mind, and imagine, if you will, that you are perfectly happy about this. This is a wonderful thing. You are going to be given some liberties, some period of time indeterminate, to create this week's little piece that we're going to make. And you are going to be metaphorically on a desert island. Now, if a desert island isn't the idea of a lovely place for you, your desert island could be a little cabin in a clearing in the woods, or it could be a little stone bothy on a Scottish mountainside, or it could be a lovely little wooden beach hut on the seaside, or or it could be a little country cottage surrounded by a beautiful garden. Whatever, your own desert island. That's just a concept. It's not a literal island with a palm tree and a hammock. And on your desert island, wherever that may be, you will be given all your favourite foods. They will appear magically on a plate next to you, and your favourite drink will appear in a glass next to you, and those will be cleaned, and you'll have no laundry and no worries, only creating your piece. Sound good? Everybody on board? You'll be taken there by Magic Carpet, K3N Airlines, at no expense, in complete luxury and no danger of falling off. There's invisible magic things around you, so if you're worried about flying, nothing to worry about. It will be wonderful. There is, however, one proviso. There's a baggage allowance. I'm going to England next week, and I have to be very careful about, what I want to take with me, and I want to be careful about what space I want to leave to bring things back, and so on. I have a baggage allowance. That's normal. The baggage allowance for your trip to your desert island takes inspiration from a Radio 4 programme in Britain that's been going since the 40s, called Desert Island Discs, where they have a famous person or someone who's done something good in the world or whatever on the show, and that person has to choose 8 discs, 8 songs, 8 tracks, and then they're interviewed and so on. And the idea is, if you're cast away on a desert island, what are the 8 pieces of music that you couldn't live without, that you'd have to take with you? So we're not going to take music with us. We're going to take a sewing kit thing, collection of a stash. We're going to take a stash. But the stash, I really don't like saying the word even, will consist of 8 things. That will be your 8 songs. Okay? And the other thing is, I don't like to put time pressure on you, ever, but in the interests of trying to do this as intuitively as possible, when you choose your 8 items, your magic carpet's there waiting, I don't want you spending all... I don't want you, that sounds like... try not to spend all day choosing, because we're sort of back to Choices Week, where we put the strips in a bag and pick them at random. Try and imagine that you're going to be on this desert island, or, wherever that may be for you, and what things will bring you joy. What of those 8 things? And obviously some of them will need to be practical things, because you'll need a needle to sew with, and you'll need some thread, and you'll need some scissors, and you might not be able to live without applique pins. Am I going to be mean and say that a box of applique pins is one object, or I'm going to say a pin is one object? Maybe I'll leave things like that up to you. But, a Rubbermaid tub of cloth this big is not one of your items, because the baggage allowance, those things at the airport where you have to put your bag in to see if it fits so that you can take it into your cabin, okay? The magic carpet has one of those as you climb on board. It is this big. Okay? This is my little sewing pouch that I take to England. I think it's about 6 inches square, and you could stuff it fatter, but it won't get more than about 2 or 3 inches thick. So I want you to either find something, a pouch of your own, or hiding, or a little basket, or something that is somewhere in the realm of that size. Do you see how, you know what 6 inches square looks like? And in that you must put your must, you know. You don't have to do this. You don't have to do this ever, you know. I just think I think it will be helpful. I think you'll enjoy it. So that's why I'm presenting it. But your 8 things have to fit into this little thing that fits in those frame things at the airport. And then you can climb on the magic carpet and go to your desert island, and we'll make this week's project. Okay? Does that sound good? Does that sound like a plan? Is everybody on board with the magic carpet? I'm thinking about the rug in Aladdin. I can't get it out of my head. I'm sorry. You know, the Disney film with the wonderful Robin Williams as the genie. That carpet, I mean, this is a digression. The magic carpet in that film, the way they gave that carpet with the little tassels, Fula, Kawandi, at each corner, the way they gave that character, you know, it didn't even have a face. Anyway, sorry. So it's a magic carpet. We're going to a desert island. You need to pack your bag. Don't take ages over it, you know? Don't take ages. Just pick some stuff and put it in a pouch or a basket or a little bag, or just even on a piece of cloth and tie your 4 corners as if you're putting it on a stick over your shoulder. Okay, I'll stop wittering now, and I'll let you go and choose your things. Oh, just to say, if you normally stitch along with me, then obviously you can pause here, go and find your things and stitch along. If you don't normally stitch along with me, if you normally watch the video, I know some people watch and then do it later, or watch in parts or whatever. I can't remember the point now. That's the problem when I go off on these tangents. Yeah, if you don't normally stitch along with me, maybe it would be an idea to stop here, get your bits and pieces together, and then not watch the end of the video, not watch the rest of the video until you've done that. Because I wouldn't want you watching the next hour and whatever to affect your choices. Does that make sense? To be influenced by the things that I've chosen, for example, or I want you to sort of instinctively feel what are the 8 things that you really would have to take with you for this lovely time you're going to have on your desert island. Does that make sense? Again, I'm not here to tell you you must. That's just a suggestion so that you get the most that's possible out of the exercise. I will now stop wittering. I will now go to my desk, and I'll show you what I've got in my pockets. Okay, thank you. Okay, so here I'm at my desk. I should have said as well, the pouch or container or whatever doesn't count as one of the 8 things. That's the container. So I'll show you what I've chosen in my pouch. So I have got, now I've been minimalist and purist, and I haven't done the box of things counting as one or anything like that, but you know, you can do what you like. I've got a tulip size 8 needle, pretty difficult to be without. I have got one solitary applique pin, so that's 2 things. And then in here I've chosen some cloth, and I've chosen some pieces from my recent onion dyeing experimentations that I shared here. So I've got a piece of wool blanket, just because, you know, I just love it. I've got a piece of old linen sheet, again dyed with onion skins, and I've got a piece of cotton which was from the rust printing, which then also went in the onion skins. Obviously they're already the right size for my journal, because so now I'm up to, that's 5 things. I've got, I mean, you know, I'm going to a desert island. I take a bit of old envelope cut into a circle as one of my 8 things. Psychologists would probably have a field day, but anyway, and I probably could just stitch circles without a template. It's interesting, you know, it's interesting to evaluate your choices. But anyway, one of my 8 precious things that I would take to a desert island is a circle cut out of a bit of old envelope with lots of pinholes in it where I've used it before. Maybe because I was thinking about islands and enclosure, and I don't know. So then I've got 2, so that's 6 things. And then to forego scissors, I cut myself 2 lengths of thread before I got on the magic carpet. So I've got here a bit of my onion skin dyed silk, 1 length, And here I've got a bit of my some vintage Anchor embroidery floss, one length but all 6 strands. And that's it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. That's my 8 things. That's all I've got. And it's quite warm on my desert island, so I'm going to roll my sleeves up and get stitching. I'm going to put my pouch to one side. I'll stick that and that in there. Get my pouch out of the way. So I'm very much looking forward to hearing about your choices that you made and what you took, and how you feel about it, as always. I'm just going to make a start. I don't have scissors, so I have to go, I can't, you know, unless I can tear. I guess I could try and tear this if I wanted to. But then, you know, you have to weigh up, do I take my scissors or do I take this? If I took my scissors, maybe I could have cut myself a circle template out of a leaf or something that I could find on my desert island, you know? Anyway, I've got my 3 bits of cloth. I think I quite like them in the way that they are. I might just put that there and put that there. So now you know, I only have this to go on. I can't get anything else from anywhere. I suppose I could start ripping up bits of my pouch if I really wanted to. I think I'm just going to do that and stitch it on for starters. So obviously this week everybody's piece will be different, you know. You don't, I mean, of course feel free to do a similar thing to what I do if you happen to have chosen a circle of envelope, or you just want to stitch a circle, you know, by eye. I'm going to take 1 strand of my precious bit of floss, which is all I've got with me. It's quite a long, you know, it's a lazy girl's length, have to be honest. And I'm going to thread it into my 1 needle, which is no great hardship because I nearly always use this needle anyway. And I think I'm first going to just stitch this down. I don't think I'm going to do the invisible baste because I need to get the most from this thread. I think I'm going to use my applique pin in the middle just to hold it, since I've been to the trouble to bring it with me on my magic carpet. And I'm going to put a knot. Am I going to put a knot? No, I don't think I'm even going to put a knot, you know, because even that tiny little bit at the back of the knot might be precious. I'm just going to start stitching. I'm just going to let the end just sit there like that. Maybe I'll do a tiny weeny back stitch just to start me off. Oops. See, I did that. No knot. I'm pulling quite hard and it's not moving. Those embroidery people know a thing or two. I'm just going to stitch along this edge, apparently. That's what I'm doing. I suppose I should tell you, because I talked about all the different possibilities for desert islands, what my idyllic location would be. I do love the beach and the sea. So maybe I would be at the seaside, but I don't think I'd be anywhere really, really hot, because I don't like it really, really hot. I might be somewhere with a nice sea breeze and just pleasantly warm. And, you know, a beach hut. I have very fond memories of beach huts from when I was younger. So I think I'd have a little beach hut with just 1 comfy chair, with my little table next to me with my magic plate and my magic glass. Sorry, sorry about that. And I'd be sitting. My beach hut's got like a little deck in front of it, so that I can look out to the sea. And I'm sitting in, I think they're called Adirondack chairs, you know, those big wooden chairs with a sort of footrest built in, one of those. And it's got some comfy cushions on it. And I can maybe hear some seabirds. Jonathan Livingston seagull crying overhead. And I'm just sitting with my few little bits that I brought with me, and I'm quite happy. I'm quite peaceful, and I'm just stitching, and I have no expectation of the thing I'm making turning into something. I have no fear of showing it to anybody and what they might think about it. I have no thought of, are my stitches even? Am I doing a good job? I'm just enjoying the pleasure of sitting in my ideal spot in this moment. And I'm stitching my bit of old sheet that I've dyed with onion skins onto my bit of old blanket, also dyed with onion skins. And that's all that matters in this moment. I probably, I mean, that's a choice in itself, deciding where your desert island will be. Because I might have chosen, you know, the clearing in the woods, because I love the woods. But maybe because I'm lucky enough to kind of have that already. That's why for my desert island time, I went for something different. And I have often actually in the real world done stitching on beaches. I've stitched in most places, I think. Most places I go, I end up stitching. And when I lived in England and I had all the stuff, and I was kind of on my journey into where I am now of not buying new cloth and looking at what I consumed, and also my practice became more hand stitch focused and slow. We used to go camping. We've got still an old Land Rover from 1986. And we used to go camping on Exmoor, on a farm campsite up on Exmoor in the summer. And so the Land Rover had to fit everything, including our tent, which is a big canvas bell tent. It takes up quite a lot of room. But also I was not a minimalist camper. I was not, you know, a little pup tent and a roll of that, that foamy stuff and a sleeping bag, you know, and all my pans slotted in together. That wasn't me. I had a proper mattress, or we had a proper mattress, and there was a wooden cupboard that actually we made from an old wardrobe that just slotted in. I've got all around my piece now, and now I'm thinking about what to do with this thread, because I can either break it with my teeth. I have no scissors. I have no scissors of any kind, not even the Fiskars that aren't very snippy. So my choice now is to either try and break this thread with my teeth, which is, I would get told off enormously by my mother if she saw me doing that, or I could maybe go and find a bit of sharp flint on the beach and cut through it, or I'm just going to have to leave it attached and go on with it until it's run out. I think what I'm going to do is pull it down so that it ends up double. Actually, I'm going to take it through to the back, and then I'm going to pull that tail up just past the other bit of tail, so that when I come back through to the front somewhere, I end up with a double thickness of thread. If that makes any sense. See? So now I've got a little tail on the back, and my thread's double. Now I'm going to have a problem getting my needle off it, aren't I? Do you see? Do you see? Do you see? No, I can't do that, because when I come to the end, unless I have to break the thread to get the needle off, so then my needle will be permanently attached. So I'm not going to do that. I'm going to carry on with a single thread. I think I'm just going, and you can't see at all because it's exactly the same colour as the piece I'm stitching, and I'm just going to start stitching back and forth with my single bit of thread. So that decision I took to only have a single thread to start with, I now have to keep going. I could add another thread to it, but then it would be a different length. This is me now overthinking.
overthinking my choices within the limited options that I have. Anyway, I should carry on with my single thread, just stitching back and forth and just enjoying the texture change that it's making in my bits of cloth. Yes, so we used to go camping, you know, with this cupboard, and the cupboard was to stand up at, and it was also storage, but it was to stand up at to prepare food and so on. We were allowed to have fires on this campsite, but as they had to be off the ground, so we used to take the fire pit that I've still got with us. A big, you know, like it's like an old oil drum or something like that on little legs that you make. You know what a fire pit is. Anyway, that used to get put up on the roof of the landie. And I used to cook most of our meals on that and do a bit of eco-printing and so on. So by the time we had all that and the children's things, you know, the children's stuff and the children themselves and the 2 dogs, all in the landie, and the tent and the canopy for the front of the tent, and all that. Oh, and rugs. I used to take those cotton rag rugs that are now in the house. But they were, you know, they're called chandy rugs. The ones made of recycled cotton woven together to put all down in the tent. And we would stay there, the children and I would stay there for the entire school summer holidays, because it was only an hour or so from Hans's office and from the airport, because we were in England at the time, like I said, and Hans would have to fly abroad for work to the mainland, to the mainland. So he would come on his motorbike or in his company car or whatever, and the kids and I would stay on the campsite, and he would commute from the campsite basically. And so with me, to take with me for my stitching and so on, I began making little bundles of cloth to take with me. So I would make a bundle of cloth for eco-printing on, and I'd make another little bundle of scraps of cloth for stitching with, and then I would have a little basket with a few threads in, and, you know, my needle, my pins, my scissors, all that, the usual minimal supplies. And I found that those few weeks that we spent camping, when I was making things with that mini kit that I took with me, I got so much more pleasure from them. My big scroll that I think I showed you, I haven't shown you the inside of it, but I think on my studio tour I showed it. It's about a foot wide and a couple of meters long, but it's made from scraps of old sheet that I eco-printed on that campsite, and then in scraps, and then I sort of cobbled it all together and stitched it into this great long strip. But again, it's old sheet, it's some thread, and, you know, I had a needle, and that was it. And that is still remains one of my favourite pieces to make, and also to look at, you know, the process of making it and the finished object. And I think doing that through going away and having to take a minimal amount of stuff with me, that's when I really sort of cemented in my mind the fact that all the choices I had at home were not necessarily a good thing. Now I'm nearly to the end of this precious bit of thread, but if there's a stitch left in it, then I don't want to waste it, because when it's gone, it's gone. Well, there's, you know, I've got the other 5 strands, but oh, my needle's come unthreaded on the right side. You know what, I'm just going to leave that like that. What shall I do now? So, even with these few things, I still have choices. Do I apply this onto the top somehow? Do I use my circle template, which apparently has been so important to me that I've had to bring it, and stitch a circle somewhere? And then if I stitch this circle, do I stick with my gold thread, or do I use my darker thread, my silk? I think I'm going to do a silk circle. And that, I think, is why I brought my applique pin, so that I can hold this on. Normally I would put pins around the edge, a few, but I don't have a few, so I'm going to have to just manage. I'm going to put my circle there-ish. So I'm just going to have to put my one pin in the middle, and then I'm going to have to embrace the imperfection of the fact that I now have to stitch around an edge that's gone a bit wibbly wobbly. And I'm going to be so careful that I don't tangle this or make any knots in it, because if that happens I'm going to have to untangle it. I don't have another bit. So yeah, so the bundle thing, I thought, well, if that works when I'm camping, you know, why don't I just kind of reproduce that at home where I have got more stuff? So I started putting my, I had some big tubs. I think a couple of them they'd had the children's toys in. I think they came from IKEA, you know, those big plastic tubs with lids. I have my IKEA cutting tables that I've still got here now, one of which was originally a kitchen work surface in our home in France when we lived here before. And then we bought a second one to put them together to give me a surface. When I was in England, when I was teaching at one point, when we first lived there, we rented a house called the Old School House, and it had the old schoolroom at the back. And that was my studio, and I used to give, in the early days, I used to give workshops in there just for 3 or 4 students at a time. So we got that second cutting table, and then there was a big enough surface for 4 people to stand around and work. So anyway, my big tubs fit on there. I go off down these. Anyway, my big tubs fit nicely under there, so I got a couple more of the big tubs, and I sorted through my stuff. This was before I knew we were coming here, and I did the de-stash that I talked about in the introduction. I'm around my applique pin now. Ooh. And I just went through and chose small pieces or tore pieces off bigger pieces and made little bundles, as if, you know, in that same mindset as if I was going camping for a few weeks. And the bundle was what I was going to take with me. And I put everything else in the tubs. So it's still there, you know, all you have to do is pull a tub out and take the lid off, and there it is. But it's in a closed tub. And then my bundles are in open baskets just slotted in. I think I showed them in my studio tour a little bit. And so I have one basket which is primarily my eco print cloth, and in fact that's all my eco print cloth in that one small basket. I don't eco print yards and yards and yards. I just, you know, I do most of my eco printing in late summer or autumn, and I just do a few bits for the same reason, not to overwhelm myself. And so there's a basket with eco prints, and then there's another basket with bits of vintage cloth and tea dye, and some eco prints mixed in, and some natural dyes, just little bundles. And then there's a third basket which has small scraps of old sheet that I use for backings and so on. And then there's a fourth basket that's got scraps of wool, you know, thick woolly blanket and bits of felted wool from old clothing and so on. And those baskets, that's primarily what I work from. And my scraps, you know, I've got my scrap basket with all the tiny weeny bits in. And that's it. And I don't open the big tubs unless I'm making a bigger project, like when I made my larger Kawandi. Or if my bundles are getting a bit low, I'll go through the big tubs, you know, and just add to my bundles. I'll just show you my basket quickly, why not? I'll just come through, which is, you know, I'm just going to hop on the magic carpet, whip back to my studio, get the basket, and here we go. So, look up. Can you see? It's a bit up in your face. So this is one basket. It's, what is it, about 15 inches by, or a foot by, you know, it's not very big. It's just a small basket. It's my hand deep. And so that's all the onion skin stuff, because I did it recently, so it's still sitting there. And then I have these other, can you see them? just random bundles of bits of cloth. There's 1, 2, there's 3 like that, random. That's a lot of cloth to me. And then that's my indigos, my last little bit of indigo that I've got left, my bigger pieces. And so I need to think about getting my indigo vat fired up. So that's those. And they smell lovely because I like to burn these incense sticks. Nag Champa, you see it? And just bought myself a couple more boxes last time I was in England. I'll be in England when you're watching this, but anyway. And the spare ones, I keep them under the cloth because I just love it that they make the cloth smell nice. Well, I think it's nice. My mother says it smells like an old hippie. Well, you know, I am an old hippie, so. And then my second basket. I don't need to show you the old sheets, you know what old sheets look like, but this is my entire stash of eco print. I have no more. I did eco print some extra to make some work for the exhibition, but this basket, this is all I have of eco prints. So, and that's some natural dye, so that's mostly madder in there. That's some bits of silk chiffon that have been naturally dyed, apart from the black, which I bought that colour. It's a little bundle of some smaller scraps of eco print. You know, the tiny scraps. And then here is mostly cotton sheets and things, quite thick stuff, so that would be for lining journals and so on. And then this is the sort of finer stuff really, so silks and thinner cottons, a bit of rust print. That's it, you know, that's all I have. I mean, some people might say that's a lot, some people might say that's hardly any. It's a matter of perspective, but that is literally all my eco prints in that basket. And then I have the few tubs. What's that? Just a bit of basket's fallen off. So anyway, back to my little piece that I'm stitching. So I've done my one circle. I've taken my circle off. Must keep all these precious things so they don't get lost. So now, again, I don't have scissors, so I either have to carry on stitching with this colour. I think I'm going to go around my circle once more with feeling. Or I could unthread it, put it to one side and start stitching with the other and then come back to it. That's also a choice. It's definitely, it's a thing, you know, it's a psychological thing. I did a bit of background reading. It's called overchoice, and another related concept is called the paralysis of analysis. That's hard to say. But overchoice is that there's a kind of a progression from when you don't have any choice. That's obviously very bad. People that have no choice at all because they don't have anything. And then you start on a path where you start to have choices, and then it gets better and better. You know, you have adequate choice, good choices to make, good things to choose from. You know, you don't want to live on bread and water, for example, for food. That's all you've got is bread and water. You want to have some other choices of things to eat. But then there's sort of a tipping point, which might vary from person to person as well, I would think. Where you come into the realm of too much choice. And I think it is overwhelming the world today. I've talked about it a little bit when I was talking about young people and, you know, the pressure to have stuff. You go into the supermarket. Well, the supermarkets here are quite small, unless I go to one of the big towns, which I try to avoid doing. But even there, you know, you want to buy some pasta. How many different kinds of pasta are there? I'm going to creep off the edge of my... I'm going to turn around and go back the other way. Because I do not have the option to cut my thread. So I could either jump, but then I would waste 2 inches of thread. And I'm going to go back the other way and do 3 lines. You know, you want a bag of pasta and you go into the supermarket and there's 20 different kinds of pasta, even in our little local supermarket. And there'll be factors like price and type and shape and, you know. And I think a lot of us just buy the same one every time, and others have a change. I don't know why the world seems to need us to have so many choices. Stelz has now made the choice to start barking because she hears an engine. Yeah, so that's that. Don't know what she's barking at. I'm not expecting anybody. It's too late for the postman, so it's probably just a neighbour going by. Yeah, the paralysis of analysis. And I think that when you're faced with that overwhelming amount of choices to make, that's... I'm sorry for her barking. It's, yeah, like I said, it can really get you down. And you might get to the point where it's difficult to do something about it, you know. I'm quite lucky in that I have a tidy mind. I have it's a blessing and a curse sometimes, but I'm generally quite organised and librarian, you know. Right, that's my 3 circles done. But still, I mean, here we have barns, and there's stuff in boxes still that apparently we thought was important enough for us to bring. I think I'm going to just jump slightly over as near as I can into my circle. And I think I'm just going to do a straight line like that. I don't know why. It's just what I'm going to do. You're right, Stelz. Have you seen them off? Have you chased them away, whoever they were? So, yeah, I mean, you know, there's... even so, after, how long have we been here now? Where are we? 7 years? 6 and a bit years? And there's stuff still in boxes that even though we edited our belongings, we thought those things were important enough to bring with us, and 7 years later, they're in boxes in the barn still. So, you know, and if you don't have the space, I'm just going to jump up there. If you don't have the space to store things, and it's all in your home, it really can become too much. I know that when I was younger, I used to love tidying my room every night. No, I didn't used to love tidying my room. My mother would have snorted derisively if she could hear me say that. My room would get, as you know, many children's rooms do, into an absolute mess. And every so often I would go and do a major tidy, which would take a day or more. Do you know that thing? I still do it now sometimes. I do it when I'm a bit upset. I rearrange the house. My husband comes home and goes, "Oh, well, the sofa used to be there and now it's there." It's quite limited in this house because it's very small downstairs, so it's quite difficult to rearrange things. But right, I'm going to go through to the back. That's the end of my one precious piece of thread. I'm going to... Do you know what? I want to leave the end on the front because that's all there is. I'm going to have to try and thread it back through. What I would usually do is grab a bigger needle, but I can't because I haven't got one with me. And my thread's gone all taily on the end. You know what I mean? It's got a long straggly thing. I can't do anything about that either. I did it. I managed. Yeah, because even that little bit of thread is precious on this, on my little beach hut island. Okay, so now I've got this piece. I'm going to cover up my circle. Can I tear it? Put some there. Yes, I can. Oh, look. See? I've got my 2 hands. We often forget that we've got our hands. Well, there's so many tools available to crafters, aren't there? That we're told will make our lives easier. And many of them do. And I'm absolutely not against anybody, especially people with trouble with their hands, which I have it to look forward to. I'm sure it's already beginning. Bit of arthritis in my hand there. That some tools are life-changing, life-saving, whatever. But a lot of the tools that we're told make our lives easier actually don't. I don't think. I'll put that one piece there, and I've still got this piece. I want to have this piece. Could I tuck it under there, the other way around? See, now I've only got a small number of pieces, but I still have choices that I can make, and they're choices actually that are pleasurable to make, I think. You know, it's not that all choices are bad. Do I like that there like that? Not really. I'll do this first and come back to that. I want that to be narrower. I'm really pushing my luck if I try and tear another bit off. No. Advantage of old cloth, you can tear it without scissors even. I'm supporting it very carefully between my thumb and finger so it doesn't tear the wrong way. Even these bits, I mean this cloth is too old, those threads will snap, but if you had a different kind of cloth, and it's very possible this cloth, you wouldn't need the thread. You could pull threads out of the cloth to stitch with. I have done that. Maybe we'll do that one week. I mean, that's too short, but if you had the right kind of cloth, I mean, I could couch those on. Maybe I'll do that. Those precious little threads. I'll save them there, and we'll see. You know, if you've got the right sort of cloth that you can take threads out of and they're sturdy enough to stitch with, you can just have your piece of cloth and a needle and you can stitch. I'm going to put that right down at the bottom to kind of anchor it. That way around, I think, or that way up. See, I've got, with this one little piece of cloth, I've got multiple places I can put it. That way up, that way round. Hope I'm in shot. Yeah. So I've got my last bit of gold thread. Yeah, so I was talking about tidying my bedroom and rearranging the house. So I would get everything out of my bedroom onto the landing. My mother used to go, oh no, there she goes again. She always knew it would go back, you know, that it would all go back and my room would be tidy briefly for a brief period of time until I messed it up again. I'm going to take one of my precious lengths of thread and double it up, because then I won't be committed to stitching with it until it's gone. So that's a decision that I've made, and that's my rationale for that decision. So I will get everything out onto the landing, probably apart from wardrobes and things I couldn't move myself very far. And I don't know if I actually cleaned the room. That might have been a bridge too far. Maybe I pushed the vacuum cleaner around, you know, the Hoover. And then I would gradually move things back in, rearranging and tidying. Oh, I've made a knot without thinking. Never mind. Without gradually moving things back in and rearranging as I went to how I put my bed somewhere different and the precious thread and so on. And then I'd be very happy with my tidy room for a while. So the point of me telling you about me tidying my bedroom is if you've got, you know, your studio, your crafting space, or your house, or wherever it is you keep all your supplies, avoiding the other word. If you have got so much that you're becoming overwhelmed with it, I'm not saying drag it all out, you know, into the street or whatever. it can be difficult to know where to start if you have limited space to move it to. It's, you know, you get to the point where you're in that crisis of indecision where you're just blocked, and you can't even really decide what do you want to keep and what do you want to get rid of, and you can't, you know, there's that expression, you can't see the wood for the trees, can you? And I would think that if you're in that place, I think my advice would be, for what it's worth, to just start small. Don't do what I did as a child and drag everything out onto the proverbial landing, you know, and clear the room and start again. Unless you can do, unless you have a spare room where you can put everything, and then make your, you know, if you're lucky enough to have a dedicated crafting space, you can make your craft, you know, get everything out that you can move into another room, and then get your crafting space how you want it, and then make your choices in terms of what you allow back in, and then find solutions for the rest of it, whether you can put it into storage or whether you just completely rehome it, you know. And you can almost look at it item by item and say, if I never saw that again, would I be unhappy? And if the answer is no, I would not be unhappy, then find another home for it. If you don't have the luxury of being able to do that, then I would say create space in one part of your room. You look at your room, or you know, if it's a corner of your living room or whatever, and say to yourself, where am I most comfortable working in this space? And then start in that space. Make that space comfortable for you. Some people like to have everything out everywhere where they can see, you know, what they call a creative mess. I personally prefer it to be reasonably tidy. I like things out on show, but the things that are out on show, I like them to look nice, you know, in my view of what looks nice. So I have things in open baskets and so on. Some people are worried about dust, so they prefer that their things are stored in covered containers. Well, those are all personal choices that you can make. But I think the principle of creating yourself a space, a little corner that makes you happy, however that might look, whether it's from, you know, neatly labelled covered boxes to things draped over the backs of chairs, or whatever makes you not feel overwhelmed. Just start with a little corner, so you've got somewhere to sit and be and work and feel comfortable, and then work out from that, you know. Because to take it on all on at once, if you're feeling that overwhelmed, can really, you will get disheartened quite quickly, and, you know, it will then become even more difficult. It's like with a garden, you know. I worked years ago as a gardener. I did a course in garden design at Lackham College in Wiltshire, a 2-year course. And then I worked as a gardener for people, domestic people, you know, not anything major. So I would go and plant herbaceous borders for people, or one lovely project I did was overhauling a herb garden that was all laid out, you know, in a formal style, in quite a nice big detached house. But it was entirely overgrown, and the structure was still there, but it was a case of getting all the plants out, and, you know. But if you, I don't know, why am I talking about those people? They had a lovely dog as well. Let's just really digress down a entirely unrelated. Had a lovely little dog. What was her name? I can't remember her name, but she was like a little Jack Russell-y type dog, and she would come and sit and watch me while I was gardening. Anyway, yes, no, I mean, luckily they had lots of land, and so they had a whole dedicated area which some kind chap, who, I don't know if it was the owner or another, you know, the chap who did the major gardening, the heavy work, dug over a whole bed for me so that I could gradually get out all the plants that we wanted to keep, all the herb plants that we wanted to keep, and transplant them into this holding bed. And then I could get in and get all the perennial weed roots out, and, you know, improve the soil where necessary in all the different ways and so on, and get all the structure, clear all the paths are all brick paved, you know, and clear all the weeds out of the paths. But we did it all by hand, and because there was thyme and chamomile and things growing as well that we wanted to keep. It was a lovely project. And then once all that structure was right and done and cleared, then I replanted the herbs. And it was a project that took a whole spring and into an early summer. But it was wonderful to do. But if you can't do that, you know, if you don't have the holding bed that someone's dug for you to put all the plants in, if you inherit an overgrown garden or your own garden's got overgrown, what I like to do, well, the first thing I do if there's a lawn is cut the grass. It's like an untidy bedroom. The first thing I would do in an untidy bedroom is make the bed. Straight away, the whole room looks better if you make the bed. Or in a garden, cut the grass. I'm going to leave that on the front as well. I just feel like I need to leave all these little ends on the front. And I like that. I like the way the little crosses are appearing, so I'm going to get another strand. So I probably could have used 2 strands, but now I'm going to just take another single strand and fold it double again. But yeah, so when I go out in my garden, I leave my garden deliberately, my dye and vegetable garden. I leave it over winter. I don't cut back the dead growth or whatever, because insects can overwinter then, and the seeds for the birds and so on. And also I like a natural garden, so I like things to be allowed to self-sow. I have things that self-sow. Verbena bonariensis, one of my favourites, and Lichnus coronaria, which has got the grey soft leaves and the magenta pink flowers. Borage is coming up all over the place. I'm not going to do a knot this time. So when I go out in the spring, it can look overwhelming because it's one big mess, you know. So I just start with one bed or one corner or one place, rather than going through the whole garden, doing a bit here and a bit there, and then after a couple of hours you can't tell you've been there. I just start with one little corner and clear that completely, you know, tidy that up completely, and then you step back and you have a sense of achievement, and that encourages you to go on the next day or the next time or whatever. It's just finding ways, and it can be difficult, and you know, especially if you're on your own doing it. I think if you are overwhelmed, if you can find somebody to support you in it, either physically, and you know, someone can come round and help you, a friend or a relative or whatever, or just somebody can give you moral support, you know, you can. I know we have had some discussions here and there in the comments here and in the Facebook group, and other people have said, oh yes, I completely understand, I'm like that as well, and people share tips and just general moral support and understanding that this is a thing. Because if you said it to some people, oh, I'm feeling really low because I've got too much stuff, they might look at you like, you know, what are you saying? How can you complain that you've got too much stuff when, you know, some people don't have any stuff, that kind of attitude. But it really, really, I know, can get you down. So I hope that I'm helping, if that's you, if you're in that place. And even to just sit and do this, you know, just go and get your few bits. Go and get yourself a few bits. I mean, you don't have to do it in absolutely the structured way of this week, but just for future reference, if you're feeling overwhelmed, and it's not only with stuff either, it can also be with projects. And I have to hold my hands up and say, here I am throwing projects at you right, left and centre. That can also be overwhelming, and that's another thing. And I know I have that myself. And I've gradually found ways to come to terms with it. You know, that feeling of, oh, I want to do this, oh, I want to do that. And that what they call a butterfly mind. And also that pressure on yourself to finish things. I'm laughing because I don't even know if I dare tell the story. Like when I was teaching, well, I'm telling it, I'm not going to say any rude words, you fill that in with your own brain or not. When I was teaching, I was demonstrating to the class before we got into it, and so they're all stood around, and I was showing things, and I was talking about the project that they were going to start, and it was making a quilt machine sewn using a certain technique, and that they weren't going to, we weren't going to complete it in the day, but then later on, when they took it home and finished it, I would love it if they then emailed me photographs or whatever. And this woman, who is now a dear friend of mine, went, "Oh, you said the F word." I knew I hadn't said, the actual F word, but my brain went, "Did I?" And I was like, "Oh no, oh goodness me, oh, oh." And my face must have gone white for fear that I'd inadvertently, And this lady said, no, it's okay, I meant finished. So now whenever I hear the word finished, I get that same kind of, I think my face is red if you could see me. I think I'm blushing. I'm not ending my thread off. But anyway. Yeah, multiple projects. What am I going to do now with my bit of thread? And actually, I'm holding it that way. No, I do prefer it that way. Because there's more weight to that. And when I'm composing a piece, I like the weight to be at the bottom. So this to me is heavier. I'm showing you something. And this to me is heavier, so it's fallen to the bottom. Does that make sense? It's just, it's just a thing. It's just a thing. What I'd really like to do is do some seed stitching, I think, in this area of my circle that doesn't have any stitching in it yet. But I've got this bit of thread down here, and I'm not going to jump all the way over there. Do you know what? I'm going to let that dangle, unthread it, and I'm going to get some more of this gold. And I really wished I'd brought more of the onion skin with me and less of the gold. But I didn't, so there you go. I would just have been as happy with 2 lengths of that. Because without scissors, you see, I couldn't have just brought a huge long length because I wouldn't have been able to cut it in half. That was a decision I had to make when I left the scissors behind. Yeah, what was I saying about projects before I digressed into when I thought I'd said a really bad word in front of a room full of students? Of course, I've never said that word in my life. Make of that what you will. Anyway, what was I saying? Projects, yes. It's not only stuff that can be overwhelming, it's projects, and it's not necessarily projects that you've actually begun, projects that you've got laying around, what they call PhDs, projects half done. I'll talk more about that as well, because you won't be surprised to hear I have some thoughts about that. Because I've got a loop in this thread, what I can do is come through from the back, leave my loop like that, make my first seed stitch, and then go through my loop and pull it up, and then I don't need a knot. I'm just going to do some seed stitches. Yeah, so when I was a normal quilter, when I made quilts by machine using fabric that I bought, it's funny that I then call that fabric and I normally say cloth. I wonder if there's a distinction in my brain between cloth and fabric. Anyway, I would have, in the beginning I would have a lot of quilt tops, but you would piece them, and I was hand quilting, so that was taking forever and a day. So the machine piecing and the hand quilting couldn't keep pace with the machine piecing. So I can remember in my home where we lived before, we had a gallery landing upstairs, and my sewing room had been a shower room. That's how it was, tiny. Basically had one bit of kitchen worktop along one wall with some shelves above, and then maybe 2 feet of floor behind me before the wall, on which I had a bit of wadding stapled as a design wall, and that was it, and I had one chair, and that was my space. Anyway, I was lucky to have that. I'm not complaining. But so all the quilt tops that I was producing, I would throw them over the banisters on the landing, you know, over the stairs. And there was just this ever-growing stack of them, and I was hand quilting them. And that became overwhelming, and there was sort of nowhere to put them, and I didn't really want to fold them up and put them away because then I'd have to iron them all again. So they were all laid over the banisters, getting ever bigger and bigger. And then you say to yourself, well, don't make any more, just carry on with the hand quilting. But of course you want to do more because you enjoy that part of the at that time I enjoyed that part of the process. So, you know, that was one of the things that drove me to learn to quilt on the sewing machine. And I started off doing the stitching in the ditch thing, although it was more like a drunken stumble in and out of the ditch. I was never very good at doing those perfect straight lines. So then, you know, the free motion helped. When I taught myself to do free motion quilting, then I could go through them. But even then, what do you do with them, you know? I made so many, and they were so big, and only so much tolerance in your family and friends for receiving them as gifts. You would give someone a gift, and it would be, you know, the big squashy parcel, and you'd see their face fall momentarily before they managed to pin on a smile and go, "Oh, is it another quilt? Thank you." Yeah, so that part of overwhelm, not necessarily the overwhelm of actual physical fabric and thread and so on, stuff, tools, you know, stuff. But the overwhelm of projects, if you've got multiple projects on the go. And I went through a phase of trying to only make one thing at a time, but then all the joy was gone because sometimes you didn't feel like doing whatever that thing was. And you would make yourself, and then you say, well, this is my hobby, why am I making myself do this, you know? And so for me it was a big revelation to start using repurposed cloth, because then I didn't feel like I was wasting anything, and I didn't mind that I would have things unfinished or part finished, because I didn't, do you see what I mean? I didn't feel like I'd wasted anything. I was only using old stuff, old cloth and so on. And then from there came the focus on the process thing and that whole ethos. And at the same time going more into hand stitching, which slows you right down. But even within all that, you know, with the projects that I share on here, I feel sometimes kind of between two chairs, the French say, that I want to share things, you know, I want to inspire you and give you ideas and so on, but at the same time I have seen here or there some people, and it sounds a little bit like they're getting a bit overwhelmed with the number of projects, and they're feeling a kind of obligation in a sense to do them all. I mean, I don't think they think that I'm going to come to your house and, you know, apart from Denise in Tasmania, she's always got the kettle on for me. Hi, Denise. I'm not going to come to your house and, you know, say, show me your Bice Cornu, have you made your Bice Cornu? You know, it's not, I mean, I'm being a bit facetious, but what I'm saying is I know that feeling myself, because if I've followed other people on YouTube, or if I've followed other artists on Instagram, or, you know, anybody who's inspired me, Jude Hill, for, you know, when I discovered Jude Hill's work a few years ago, you see that, you go, oh, I'm really inspired by that, I want to do something with that, and then you see something else and you go, oh no, now I really want to do that, and it's that same sort of feeling of indecision that I talked about before, where you can't, you know, in the introduction, you can't go forward, you can't go backwards, you can't go sideways. You just, and I think the only way to deal with that is to just give yourself permission to do or do not. There is no try. Now I'm quoting Master Yoda. And just accept that. I think I've told this story before. I used to teach a woman who's or teach. She used to come to my Slowstitch group. Right, I've got one, sorry, I'll come back to that. I've got one double length of my gold, and that's all I've got. And I've got these two little bits left that I've torn. So I now have to think very carefully about how I want to use those. Now I don't have to use everything, of course, just because I've brought it. I can take it back with me and get back on the magic carpet. But I do feel, because I got two elements, that I want a third element. And I did like the idea of something being on that dark wall there. I think what I had before is just too big. Let's move that away because it's distracting my eye. Do I want that right up there like that? See, that's that way, so I really want that way. And do I want it to go partly over my circle like that? Go Tufty, you're too straight. I want you to be more organic. No, it won't. Or do I want a different shape? Do I want to keep that a little bit for something else and put a square? I quite like, no, you see that shape there in the rust print? I like the way that echoes that. So I've just slapped that on there. It kind of carries on that seed stitching, but I don't want it that, I want a square-ish bit of it, I think. So I want to audition before I tear it, because if I tear it and it's not what I want, then that would be bad. Don't want it like that. Still not really. See, now I'm studying these pieces that I've got. There's nothing in my brain saying, well, maybe you need a different piece of fabric, or maybe you need a different colour of thread, or, you know, maybe you need to introduce a different colour, because I don't have those options. I don't have them here on this beach. All I've got is this. So now I have to really be creative with, see, there's marks in the tea dye here, sorry, the onion skin dye here that I also like. And so now, inspired by the way that seed stitch went into there, I'm wondering if maybe what I want to do is something more like that. And I'm being very careful with this little bit of old sheet, because I don't want to tear it, and then so I'm just going to fold it to the size I think and try it. I think I'm going to do that. So I'm going to tear it long ways. Before I start tearing, could I use that bit? Talk amongst yourselves while I fiddle about with my bit of old sheet. I think I could use that bit. I think that'll have the same effect. I can save that for another project on my desert island. Do you know what? Because now I can sort of see a little boat with a circular sail, which would be a bit bizarre, but yeah, I'm going to do that. I'm going to take that tiny bit off the end. And I get the rest of those few threads out and save them there, just in case. I'm going to put it somewhere. Don't know which way around yet. More that side, I think. Yep, I'm going to put it there. I'm going to do that. I'm going to use my applique pin since I've gone to the trouble to bring it. And I'm going to get one more strand of my very long thread, because I think it's too long to use it like that. I'm in danger of knotting it. Oh, the light flickered again. I'm a bit worried about this light. Put that there. Yeah, so this lady, I think I've told you this story before. It was in my Slowstitch group, or the Slowstitch group that I led. And one day her husband came in to collect her, and he came marching up to me, quite forthrightly, shall we say, and he said, "Will you tell her?" Oh, I've got that bit there I could use. Oh, I'm going to use that bit. "Will you tell her that she has to finish things?" So I stood my ground and I said, "No, I will not tell her that." Yeah, and it stuck with me because it made me a bit cross. And it explained a lot. But anyway, you don't have to finish things. That's not the point. And you don't have to make all the things. That was a little bit my point as well about the projects. And I know most of you will say, yeah, no, we know we don't have to make everything. We can just pick and choose what we want to make. You're giving us choices. I don't want to overwhelm you with choices, but at the same time, I don't want to stop sharing things as they occur to me. Right, yeah, I'm going to stitch straight across that piece as if it wasn't there. Just to anchor it down a bit. Anchor, when it's a boat. It's not a boat, but you know what I mean. It's an abstract representation of boat. And then I'm going to come back up here and squeeze a couple more stitches out of this bit of thread across the bottom of my mast of my boat. And across there. Yeah. And yeah, I talked in my introduction about when I left England that I had students that I passed things on to. Even there, because of being aware of that feeling myself of almost feeling obligated if someone offered me something to take it. Well, you do, don't you? It's very difficult to say to somebody who's being kind, thank you so much, but I don't want that. Very difficult. I'm going to leave that thread again because apparently that's what I'm doing today on the front. So being aware of that, I didn't want to go up to people with bags of stuff and go, here you are, because I feel as well that sometimes you can be passing on the problem, can't you? You know, you've got stuff that you don't want anymore, that you want to pass on, and of course it can and mostly is motivated by kindness and generosity, but an element of it can be that you're feeling the burden of owning whatever that is, and so you pass the burden on. So I thought about that because, you know, I'd felt that myself, so I just put everything out on the side, but I was lucky that I had access to a room full of women. But I've now come right through and not ended my gone through my loop. I just put everything out along the side and asked them to help themselves and said, you know, whatever you don't take, I shall find another home for. And that's what I did. And that a lot of the things, I put out a lot of the quilt tops I'd pieced as well. There were, you know, some quite large and quilt tops that I'd bought. There was a bargello, for example, that took me a long time to make, a huge bargello that I pieced on the sewing machine to my own design, that I'd spent a lot of time doing. But it had sat in a suitcase or in a box for years in my house in England, because I made it when we first lived in France. And I had never got round to quilting it, and I knew I wouldn't. So I don't know who took that particular piece. I just put everything out and, you know, people took what they wanted. A friend of mine in England worked for a cat sanctuary, so some of the other pieces, some of the older sort of quilt tops and whatever, she said, oh, if you don't mind, if you're not offended, I'll go and cut them up and, you know, finish them off and make covers for cat beds out of them. I said, please do. They're better off having kitty cats sleeping on them than sitting in a box in my attic. So I suppose what I'm trying to say is try and find a way, if you've got stuff you want to get rid of not just passing on the burden to somebody else, but, you know, giving people a real option. And there must be ways. I mean, the worst case scenario, I know that in England, certainly some charity shops, well, they'll certainly take pieces of cloth, because we've all bought ourselves, haven't we, if we've been lucky enough to find actual cloth rather than clothing or whatever for sale in charity shops. But even scraps that, well, it's difficult for me to talk about scraps that aren't useful because I can hardly imagine a scrap that isn't useful, but I know that a couple of the charity shops where I used to live would recycle, the rags would be recycled. A lady sent me recently a project where they're making kind of bricks out of recycled cloth. I think she sent it to me on Instagram. You know, the cloth is minced up and then compressed, and it's done without the use of toxic chemicals and so on, and then formed into these brick shapes, all different kinds of shapes. And then from that, they make things for house furniture, you know, chairs and bookshelves and that kind of thing. And yeah, so there may be recycling charities or projects. If it's good new cloth, there are various different projects that make quilts for people that need them in all the different countries of the world, or, you know, many of the different countries of the world. But if you do pass stuff on, just be aware yourself of how you may have felt when people have passed it to you. Does that make sense? I feel like I sound bossy. I don't mean to sound bossy. And I'm not doing here what I intended to do because I'm not concentrating, I'm just stitching. But that's okay. I had intended to do something to echo how that bit of rust dyeing went into that shape in the onion dyeing. But instead all I've done is some little stitches up and down. Very uneven ones. But that's okay. So I've still got a bit of thread left. Like I said, I don't have to use it all. I might just want to use up this that's in my needle. Where am I going to go now? With my little boat. I think I'm just liking the look of these uneven little stitches, and I'm loving the feel of doing it, and that's definitely why I chose woolly blanket. Because there are a few things nicer to stitch into than bits of woolly blanket. Oops. And also the texture difference that you get if you do really close stitching. You're really squashing down the blanket there in that little area, and it becomes really firm. But then here where it's not stitched, it's still all soft. So I'm enjoying the contrast between those two areas. And what have I done on here? Running stitch and seed stitch. Well, you know, that is what I do if I don't think about it. If I don't think about it, I do running stitch and seed stitch, and some crosses, but I didn't do them on purpose. They just happened. And that's another thing about choices, actually. So I've talked about materials, I've talked about projects, stitches. You can look up those stitch dictionaries online or in actual books. All the, I don't know how many different embroidery stitches or kinds of stitches there are in the world. And I'm often asked, you know, not just here, but in general, sometimes quite, I don't want to say condescendingly, I don't know, or it's suggested to me that I learn some more stitches. People say, oh, you know, there's a great resource for embroidery stitches, and I don't know if it's meant that way or people are trying to be helpful, or you know, I try not to hear things as a criticism. It's difficult sometimes, but you know, I try. I try to assume that people are nice and have good intentions for my own peace of mind as much as anything else. But it's not that I don't know other embroidery stitches. I do. And if I didn't know them, then I think I've got enough ability with a needle to go and look them up and work out how to do them if I don't already know them. I'm not blowing my own trumpet, but I just like doing the stitches that I do, and I like the look of them, and I feel like I'm saying like that, and I don't mean it like that, but I went through it myself when I really was solely doing hand stitching and no machine stitching anymore of any kind. I kept looking at my work and thinking, all you're doing, Catherine, is running stitch and a bit of seed stitch here and there, and that's about it. And occasionally an eyelet stitch or a blanket stitch or a stack running stitch or a French knot. But mostly, probably, 99% of what I do is running stitch. And I would make myself do other stitches. Or I very occasionally do Cretan stitch. I do like that. And blanket stitch as a surface thing. But I very occasionally do Cretan stitch. In fact, I was doing Cretan stitch last night on that long scroll that I showed you that was hanging outside for 10 years. Because there's an area of it that's very fragile, and I wanted to do a sort of organic-y all over type stitch to hold all the fragile bits on rather than running stitch up and down. And I started doing blanket stitch and it turned into Cretan stitch because I was watching somebody on YouTube, I can't remember who, it might have been Machteld. I was watching it, or Marion. No, I think I was watching Marion. And when I looked down, my hands were suddenly doing Cretan stitch. And I thought, I haven't done that for a while, so I went with it. Anyway, very limited stitch, but it's a choice that I've made to limit my stitches. And if I want to do another stitch, I will, but I don't want to. And it's about not feeling the pressure from other people. I mean, that's all part of choice as well, isn't it? I seem to be going back into this little tiny scrap of mast on my little boat and putting even more stitches on it. Anyway, that's what I'm doing apparently. So even that, techniques. So it's stuff, it's projects, it's techniques, it's stitches. It's all the things. It's just worth, well, I was going to say just being aware, but that's quite hard to do. It's easy to say and hard to do, and it's been it's not even a journey that I finished making. I think I'm still on it. It's being recognising what makes you happy, and then having the courage to kind of stand up for yourself if you receive or you perceive criticism. It may not be intended as criticism from other people. I want to do. I don't know if it's because I know this is my last piece of thread, or I was going to couch those bits on. I really want to do that before my thread runs out. But I'm doing teeny tiny stitches with it, as if that will make it last longer. I'm going to couch these. This is really fiddly. I'm going to just couch them. Where's my thread? Bring my thread to the front so I can see it. I'll put them there with that, couldn't I? I'm going to kind of, as if it's got the wind in its sail, that's what I'm thinking. Like that. Now I want to get round to there though. Well, I'll just sneak through the layers, it's only a tiny bit. So now I'm just going to couch those a few little strands on. Where's my bit of, I'm just looking at my last two bits. Like I said, it doesn't matter. You're allowed to take things home with you on the magic carpet. You don't have to use everything. This is quite fiddly because the little ends want to pop out. The words that I've chosen, I'll just talk about that while I couch this on. Ironically, I spent quite a long time trying to choose what words. Because there's so much. There's, you know, everything that was ever written in the world about choices and being overwhelmed and having, you know, too many things to choose from. I had to choose from all of those. And I had some options in my head of pieces I already knew, but I still felt the need to go and look and see if there was anything anything new to me that I hadn't yet come across. And there were some candidates, and for one reason or another I didn't choose to go with them. I went back in the end. It's like that thing that is said often about women when they go shopping, that they see a dress in the first shop they go in, but then they have to go around, you know, the rest of... My couching's gone a bit straight, never mind. They have to go around the rest of all the shops just to check, and then they go back. I don't think that's only true of women. I don't think it's true of all women, but it's something that I've heard said about women that I think is a tad misogynistic. But anyway, I went back to the first poem that had come into my head when I sat, even before I started looking in my books of poetry or on the internet, and that is Robert Frost. So that's a poem I'm going to, or not the whole poem, because I don't think it's in the public domain, but I'm allowed a few lines for teaching purposes. And it's it's about the road through the woods. I can't remember the title. You're all shouting at me. I'm going to drop my pen on the floor, never mind. The Road Not Taken. And he wrote that after he'd spent some time in England, so I thought that was nice as well. He spent some time in England with his friend Edward Thomas, who's an English writer. And Edward and Robert would go for walks together in the woods. There's a military jet coming over. And Robert observed that his friend Edward had a great crisis of indecision when they came to two possible roads or paths to go down. And inspired by that, Robert wrote this poem, The Road Not Taken. And there have been many meanings ascribed to it. A little bit what was I talking about art at one point and saying about the perceived meaning, the intended meaning of the artist isn't necessarily the perceived meaning of the audience or the reader or whatever. So, you know, I think to some degree you are free to put your own interpretation on things. But from what I've read, Robert Frost's intention was to poke gentle fun at his friend. And there's some sense of irony in the poem. But it has been taken to be a great metaphor for life and so on, you know. So the choice is yours. But anyway, I liked the words. They seemed appropriate. So those are the words I'm going to write in my journal. I've got this bit left. I'm not going to use it up for the sake of it. I'm going to bring it to the front. If I had a dangle with me, I would have put a dangle on it. But I haven't got a dangle with me, so I won't. I'm just going to leave it hanging there with all the other threads. And that one little thread. And I haven't got my journal with me, so I'm going to have to hop onto my magic carpet and quickly fly back to my studio. I'm going to park my needle and my pin in that scrap of cloth that I didn't use. Right, I'm magically back in my studio. That took no time at all. And here's my journal. And I'm going to put my little piece in, which turned into a little boat with a circular sail with some bits of thread hanging from whatever this is. A rip in the sail? I don't know. Or a rope. Sheets. They call them sheets on boats. I do know that. I used to do a lot of sailing when I was younger. And then there's the expression 3 sheets to the wind. Don't know if you know that outside Britain, but it means you've had a bit to drink, you know, of the alcoholic variety. So 3 of your sheets are flapping in the wind. You're only held down by the 4th sheet. The sheets are not sheets like bed sheets, but they're ropes on a boat. So that's, yeah. And this is sheet, so, you know, connections, connections, connections. So page 20. Oh, my giant paper clip. I did think about one of my 8 things being a giant paper clip, but I couldn't think of a use for it. I really wanted to take one. I didn't want to go without it, but I chose not to because I couldn't think what I was going to use it for. But, well, I've only got 8 things. Can I really afford to just take a giant paper clip? Well, it's the last one of the signature. It's the last of my second signature. There we go. And now I'm back in my studio, so I'm allowed to get different thread, aren't I, to stitch it on with. What shall I use? Let's use some of this. And then I can read a bit of Robert Frost here. Yeah, on the real Desert Island disc, you're also allowed a luxury item. And I thought, well, if I, you know, when I say the real, I mean the Radio 4 program. Well, if that was me, I would take a giant paper clip as my luxury item. And my scissors. Hello, scissors. I missed you, even though you're a bit rubbish. By the time you watch this, I will hopefully have new scissors. Because this is being filmed ahead of time for you all to watch while I'm in England. Right. These are getting increasingly difficult to photograph because this week you'll have, if you've noticed, the photo didn't have this piece on. I just put the pouch because I don't want you to, you know, be distracted by what I'm making because it won't be the same as what you're making. Whoops, there we go. So I'm just going to stitch this down. And so I hope you enjoy this as an exercise, and I hope it's something that, if you're feeling overwhelmed at any point, you know, in your crafting, in your stitching, in your art, whatever you choose to call it, maybe this is a little exercise you could do. To kind of help you through that. Limit your materials. Just imagine you're going on a trip or somewhere, and don't have in your mind, or try not to have in your mind, but when I'm there I might need this and I might need that, and what if I haven't got this or that? Because please be assured that your creativity will fill in the blanks for you if there are blanks in your supplies. And in fact, I think you may find, because everybody's different, you may find that you're even more creative with less to work from. Because you kind of have to be, you know. Necessity is the mother of invention, as they say. And, you know, maybe it's extreme to not allow yourself scissors and because you needed a circle of envelope. You maybe don't have to go that extreme, but maybe the bundles that I showed you are something you could consider if you feel you've got too much stuff. And if you've got any questions or comments, or you want to ask me anything else on the subject or any subject, as always, please put it in the comments, and, you know, I read them all. I answer what I can. But I do read them all, unless YouTube hides them from me. Sometimes I see them days later, and anyway, that's between YouTube and I don't know what. But I do my best to read them all. That is always my intention. Okay, Robert Frost, where are you? I've written it in my commonplace book, From the Road Not Taken. I'm going to write it underneath, or look at the lovely backstory as well. I wonder if some of you are tempted in subsequent weeks to put your piece down with the back showing. So the opening lines, stay there, are, my head's going to come in, as it always does. 2 roads diverged in a yellow wood. yellow wood. Sorry, trying to keep my head out of the way, but then I can't see. And sorry, I could not travel both. Could not travel both. And be one traveller. Long I stood. I'll read it properly when I've written it, and because I'm reading it not with the right. Be one traveller. Long I stood. And looked down one as far as I could, and that's all I'm writing. And there's another line, but and looked down one as far as I could. This pencil needs sharpening. Okay, and the final line is to where it bent in the undergrowth, but this for me is the relevant, or the final line of the opening stanza. The poem goes on further. And we will give Robert credit where it's due. Robert Frost. Lines from A Road Not Taken. A road or the road? I've closed it now. I think it's A Road Not Taken. There we go. So, two roads diverged in a yellow wood, and sorry I could not travel both, and be one traveller, long I stood, and looked down one as far as I could. I think to me it says you come to that fork in the road where you've got the choice between one thing or the other, which you can apply to the choice between any two things. And you stand in that crisis of indecision, which is the right choice. And you want to do both, but you can't. I think Robert says it better than I'm trying to explain. But you look wistfully at the other. You take the one, but you look wistfully at the other. And I think really going, from the rest of the poem, and what he's saying is, if you'd taken the other rather than one you did take, it wouldn't really have made much difference at the end of the day. I think that's the point. The way I read it, you might have other ideas. You might have other words you want to use. As always, this is just what I've chosen. So anyway, okay. A Road Not Taken, Robert Frost. Lovely, lovely American poet about his friend Edward Thomas, an English writer. So I just liked that as well. Barely got any room to write my date, which is the 13th of May. Sorry about my head if it's in shot. 13th of the 5th, 2024. K3N Kiss. There we go. So that is my, excuse me, desert island stitching. A little boat with its sheets flapping in the wind. And my lines from Robert Frost. So I hope you enjoyed that. I hope it, was useful, or that you enjoyed, that you got something from it, or that you just plain enjoyed it as an exercise. You can interpret it as you will. I just give it and you receive it as you like. But thank you, as always, so much for watching and for your continued support. And I so much look forward to you joining me next time for more Cloth Tales. Have a lovely week. Bye bye.